E3 2015 was an interesting time for Nintendo. It was around the time that they started to realize that the Wii U just wasn't going to take off, and no one game was going to make that happen. Smash Bros. Couldn't do it, Xenoblade Chronicles X couldn't do it in Japan, and not even the likes of highly anticipated Splatoon could do it. Spring 2015 was most likely when Nintendo decided to make the full shift to their next console. Any Wii U games that were currently in development got cut insanely short, and any early projects that were intended for the Wii U probably got moved over to the next console. Because of this, Nintendo's digital event for E3 was pretty lackluster, even if you went into it with low expectations. The new Star Fox game seemed to lack the amount of polish that Nintendo is known for, the new Mario Tennis game looked as bare bones as could be, and the new Animal Crossing game was not an Animal Crossing game. But I think the most interesting and controversial thing that came out of this presentation was the reveal of the new 3DS game, Metroid Prime Federation Force. And if you were around for this, you'd know that this trailer was one of the most negatively received trailers Nintendo has ever revealed. One look at the amount of dislikes on the official channel can give you an idea of how much people were not about this game. But I'm sure there are a lot of people wondering why this game was getting such an insanely bad reaction. I mean, the game doesn't even look that bad, so what could have prompted 24,000 people to sign a petition to get the game cancelled? Well, it's a culmination of a few things. For starters, Federation Force is, supposedly, part of the Metroid series, a highly revered and respected game series that, in the past, has had an invaluable impact on the gaming industry and revolutionized the very constructs of modern game design. To say the least, expectations are set pretty high when it comes to any new Metroid titles. But in all honesty, that's besides the point. The real issue is that Metroid Prime Federation Force is not a Metroid game. I've only played a few hours of Super Metroid and Prime, and even I can tell you that this is not a Metroid game. Metroid is a game series that delves into themes of isolation, and in terms of gameplay, it would probably be more accurate to describe Metroid as a game about exploration, more than it is about shooting things. So when Nintendo revealed a Metroid game that focuses on co-op play and self-contained levels, people were pissed. So fine, let's call this game what it really is, a spin-off game. And I think this is as far as people's empathy for Metroid fans goes. You're probably thinking, yeah, I get it, they were expecting a mainline Metroid game and they got a spin-off. I would be pretty disappointed too, but spin-off games happen all the time, so it's not a big deal. Especially not big enough of a deal for something like this. Well, to explain this next part, I'm gonna have to jump over to another series that I'm more familiar with, and is in a somewhat similar situation, Valkyria Chronicles. Although the backlash here isn't nearly as big as it was for Metroid, I have more of a personal connection to this series, so I feel like I can express my emotions a little better when it comes to the practice that I'm about to describe. Valkyria Chronicles is a half turn-based, half real-time strategy game developed by Sega that came out for the PlayStation 3 in 2008, and although it was received very well, the game sold like trash. Even with the disappointing sales numbers, the game went on to build a niche and dedicated fan base that was in love with the game's unique take on strategy RPGs and its beautiful watercolor art style. Flash forward a few years later, and the sequel Valkyria Chronicles 2 is released for the PSP, with Sega no longer confident enough in the brand to develop it for a home console. This game also sold like trash. A year later, Valkyria Chronicles 3 was released for the PSP in Japan, and no one even bothered to localize this one. As you probably guessed, this one also sold like trash. For the next few years, there was little mention of the Valkyria Chronicles series from Sega, much like how Nintendo made little mention of any new Metroid projects after the polarizing Metroid Other M. Nothing was left for the fanbase but to assume that the Valkyria Chronicles series was dead, and there would not be another game in the series. That is, until the end of 2014 when Sega released a Steam port for the first Valkyria Chronicles game, and it reached the top of the Steam sales charts in its first day. It went on to sell more than it had ever sold before. There's hope for the series. Maybe the series isn't dead after all. The fanbase is now buzzing with excitement that a new Valkyria Chronicles game could be coming. This was further confirmed by Sega revealing a remastered version on the PS4 at the end of 2015, and alongside it, a trailer for the new Valkyria Chronicles game. Yes! Huh? That's kind of weird. I see swords and dresses. That doesn't really fit in with the series at all, but whatever, it's not a big deal because we got a new Valkyria Chronicles game. It's not a Valkyria Chronicles game. It's a real-time action spin-off game using the name Valkyria Azure Revolution, with no mainline Valkyria Chronicles game in the works at all, after they sold a port of the original game twice. So here's my rule of thumb if you don't want to piss off your fanbase. Do not make a spin-off game while the main series is dead. Here is why. The concept of a spin-off game is already in some muddy water. The only reason why a studio makes a spin-off game is to reduce the risk of a game flopping. It's a game that has nothing to do with the original in terms of gameplay, but carries along the brand recognition in order to assure a certain number of sales. Majority of the time, it is a corporate decision. I doubt many developers would want to work with someone else's character and lore rather than create their own. And from a customer perspective, a new IP is going to be a better experience in the long run. The project that was Splatoon almost got changed into a Mario spin-off game early on, but as much as I love Mario spin-off games, I'm sure most people can agree that what we got was a lot better. But alas, studios continue to make spin-off titles because it allows them to pour more resources into a project with the assurance that it will reach the eyes of an existing fan base. But as fans of the original games, we forgive and forget for two reasons, and two reasons only. One, to a fan, a spin-off title is a choice. It's something extra, the cherry on top that you can choose to eat or not. No one got angry about Hyrule Warriors because hey, a new Zelda game is on the way. I can choose to wait for that, or I can play this game. And most of the time it's, hey, why the hell not? What's a little fun on the side? The fan gets to play something extra that involves the Zelda universe while they wait for the real Zelda game, and the studio successfully sells a new style of game, thus getting more people into genres that they would have not tried otherwise. Everyone wins. And two, even if we don't buy the spin-off games ourselves, we know that the studio is making money from it, which in turn they will take some of the profit made from those games and pour it into the next mainline game of the franchise. There are constant jokes about Persona 4 having a remaster, 2 fighting game spin-offs, a rhythm game spin-off, and 2 anime adaptations. But to the community, it really isn't that big of a deal because we inherently know that the money that's being made from the Persona 4 brand is seeping into the production quality of Persona 5. This was especially true when we finally saw some Persona 5 trailers and noted for ourselves the jump in production quality from the previous game. Everyone was pleased that Atlus was going all out with this game, and as a result, all of this turned out to benefit the fans of the series in the end. The situation that both Metroid and Valkyria Chronicles are in is very, very different. Because there is no new game on the horizon, fans aren't being given a choice, they're being given an ultimatum. Buy this unrelated spin-off game or else you will never experience anything new from this franchise again. And that's the only reason why this name brand is being used to begin with, because they think that the fan base is going to help get the game off the ground because they have no other game from the franchise to buy. And again, because there is no word of a new game being developed, it doesn't come off as a cherry on top or a means to fund another mainline game. It comes off as a fuck you. Hey, you know those turn-based strategy games that you all loved and supported? Well, we're not making those anymore because we deem them unprofitable. We're just gonna move on to some other projects, so we don't need you guys anymore. Actually, we do need you guys because, see, we're making this new action JRPG because it's a lot more profitable than those silly strategy RPGs, but at the same time, we want to play things safe. So do you guys mind buying this one for us? Thanks. Hey, you know those dark atmospheric games that are universally loved and always brought up when discussing the absolute pinnacle of game design? Well, we're gonna stop making those because they aren't doing too well. It obviously has nothing to do with us outsourcing to a studio that has no real understanding of the series and couldn't make a faithful game. Nope, there's nothing to do with that at all. The Metroid games just aren't selling anymore. But you know what does sell though? Co-op shooters and chibi art styles on the 3DS. People love that. But we don't want to take a risk with making a new IP, and we just have this unused Metroid fanbase just sitting here, so... Do you see what I mean? A common counter-argument I heard was that you shouldn't label a game as being bad before it comes out. And you know what? Those people are absolutely right. Although there were a lot of people pissed off, a lot of this is just people jumping on the bandwagon just to be part of something. So over time it did start turning into people saying, haha, this game looks so bad, But at the beginning, before everyone started jumping on the bandwagon, it was never about whether or not this game would be good or bad. It was about Nintendo trying to make something new while dragging the abandoned fanbase along for the ride. But Hugrazi, man, this sounds pretty contradictory. You're always talking about how you like new ideas, and you even made that video talking about how important it is to try new things. Well, yeah, I do love new things, and I think it's great that Nintendo is trying to make a co-op shooter for the 3DS. But you can't call it Metroid, because by doing that, not only are you telling the fanbase that you have no plans of being faithful to the original series, but you're also telling them that you expect them to buy it. If Nintendo dropped the Metroid Prime from this title and just called it Federation Force, nothing would have happened. Federation Force would just be another new IP for Nintendo, and a lot of people would have been looking forward to it. Now, whether or not the massive backlash the game caused is justified is a very subjective matter, but the thing that I truly don't understand is how Nintendo did not see this coming. Sega is going to walk away from Valkyria Azure Revolution relatively unscathed, but the hit that Nintendo and Federation Force took was massive. This game tells me that they must have massively underestimated the amount of people waiting for a new Metroid game, but I don't understand how or why. As far as I know, Samus is still a prominent Nintendo character within the gaming community. I can't go a few weeks without seeing a new picture of someone cosplaying as Samus on Reddit. And even within the walls of Nintendo, Samus is still a prominent character. She's displayed right in the middle of the box on the Wii U Smash Bros. Cover. Even on the 3DS cover, she's displayed even more prominently than Marth from Fire Emblem, which is a much larger franchise right now. She shows up in 3DS commercials, she has an entire mini-game dedicated to her franchise in Nintendo Land, which is easily the most expansive project in the game. How did they think that the fanbase, as big as it is, was going to react positively to Federation Force after a long drought in the Metroid series? Well, there is an argument that Nintendo is actually working on a new Metroid game and they just haven't revealed anything yet, but I think that's highly unlikely based on how surprised Nintendo seemed to be about the backlash. But even if that was the unlikely case, even if Nintendo was working on some massive Metroid game for the Switch and they were just being quiet about it, it doesn't draw away from the fact that both the timing and the way Federation Force was handled from a branding perspective was absolutely terrible. There are so many ways they could have reduced, if not completely prevented, the backlash that they received for this game. If they had released a traditional Metroid game for the 3DS a year prior to the reveal of this game, there'd be no backlash. If they showed a trailer for an upcoming Metroid game and then showed this game, no backlash. If they had even mentioned that they were working on a new Metroid game, no backlash. And in terms of just reducing the backlash, they did nothing to help their cause. Everything leading up to the moment of Federation Force being revealed was pointing to a disaster. For some reason, they showed off the blast ball portion of the game at the Nintendo World Tournament that they hosted prior to E3, but they didn't call it Metroid, which led thousands of people to believe that it was a new IP, and a few to ironically joke around that this was the new Metroid game. All the while, rumors were circulating that Retro Studios, the developer of Metroid Prime, was working on a new project. That, mixed with Nintendo's lack of initiative to talk about Metroid, hype growing from the Metroid elements that were included in Smash Bros, and their overall high expectations of the biggest gaming event of the year, and you get the absolute worst possible time to reveal this game. And on top of all that, they couldn't even call it Metroid Federation Force. They had to go and call it Metroid Prime Federation Force. And there cannot be another Metroid Prime game because of various story elements that I will not spoil for you. Thus, not only did they piss off the entirety of the Metroid fanbase with the existence of this game, but they had to go and slander specifically one of the most critically acclaimed trilogies of all time. And all of that is the reason why Federation Force got the reaction that it did. At the end of the day, Nintendo screwed up and they know it. It has nothing to do with the Metroid fanbase being more self-entitled than everyone else. The exact same thing would have happened with any other fanbase if the circumstances were the same. But at least the whole situation let Nintendo know that there was a desire for a new Metroid game. I honestly don't believe that Nintendo was working on a Metroid game prior to E3 2015, nor do I think that they had any plans to. But because of this whole mess, I have no doubt in my mind that one is being developed as I speak, and there's a good chance we'll hear about it in the next 2 years, maybe even this year depending on how big of a project it is. Nintendo learned a pretty invaluable lesson that day, and I'm sure that they'll be a little smarter with their spin-off titles in the future.